Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something really fascinating, how the role of the product manager is basically being completely rewritten right before our eyes. We are going to peek inside the cutting edge, specifically looking at Anthropic to see how PMs are evolving from just managing traditional workflows and bottlenecks to actually orchestrating AI itself. It's a real game changer. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the AI native PM shift. Second, identifying one-way doors. Third, strategic brainstorming. Fourth, synthetic data and evals. And finally, training model character. Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, the AI native PM shift, moving from bottleneck managers to AI orchestrators. So think about how product development has worked for, the last 20 years? It's been totally bottlenecked. In a legacy workflow, if you wanted to know how a new feature was performing or check your daily active users, you couldn't just get an answer. You had to file a ticket, pull a data scientist away from their deep strategic work, and literally wait days just for them to pull SQL logs. But today, an AI native PM just spins up a session with Claude Code. It has direct access to your product databases, it checks the logs, it can even scan Slack for user feedback, and boom, it delivers your answers in about 10 minutes. It completely unblocks your daily decision-making. You're no longer just sitting around waiting on human dependencies to get some basic context. Think about that for a second. That is literally a 100x speedup over just the last couple of years. What used to be a grueling 4-week project to spin up a minimum viable product, you can now legitimately build and test that before you leave the office on a Tuesday. And because execution has become nearly instantaneous, it forces the product manager entirely up the abstraction layer. You aren't managing rigid sprint dependencies anymore. You are directing high-level strategy. Moving right along to Section 2, identifying one-way doors and planning in an era of rapid prototyping. Now, because spinning up a prototype is practically free these days, PMs have to laser focus their planning solely on what we call one-way doors. These are the irreversible high-compute decisions. For example, think about choosing a new model architecture before a massive pre-training run begins. That timeline can take months and requires an enormous amount of compute. That is a locked one-way door. Once you go through, you can't easily go back. Conversely, tweaking an app interface or testing a new onboarding flow, that's a highly reversible two-way door. Today's PM aggressively scrutinizes those big one-way doors and moves at absolute breakneck speed through the reversible ones. You know, to manage these massive one-way doors, even a cutting-edge team like Anthropic leans on a classic, Churchill-inspired philosophy. The plan itself is useless, but planning is absolutely indispensable. Those rigid quarterly roadmaps we're all used to, they're basically dead. Instead, it's all about continuous active planning to make sure you don't accidentally walk through a catastrophic one-way door. You still document things, you still align the team. In fact, getting humans on the same page is the new bottleneck. But you have to fully accept that the path is going to rapidly evolve. All right, Section 3, brainstorming and strategic feedback, how we use AI to debate and refine strategy. Since the PM is now focused on this high-level strategy rather than just pushing JIRA tickets around, they need a seriously robust sparring partner. And here's a wildly fascinating tactic, assigning Claude to debate itself. You write out your strategy, feed that draft document into the model, and then ask it to adopt two totally opposing personas. By watching this virtual debate unfold in real time, you can instantly spot weak arguments and hidden flaws in your own logic before anyone on your human team even sees the draft. It's brilliant. But to make that kind of strategic feedback work, you need an intensely written culture. At Anthropic, for instance, meetings actually begin with everyone doing a silent reading of heavy documentation. And this doesn't just get the humans in the room aligned. What it does is transcribe all those unwritten rules, organizational goals, and tacit knowledge into hard text. When you feed that massive corpus of context into Claude, you're giving the AI exactly what it needs to evaluate your strategy. It stops spitting out generic advice and starts giving you incredibly nuanced, company-specific feedback. Next up is Section 4, synthetic data and evals. This is basically the detective work of testing AI. Well, building a product is one thing, right? But proving it actually works requires a completely new testing paradigm called evals. It's like a continuous mini detective story. Say a PM suspects a model struggles with a specific capability, like maybe it has trouble counting objects in highly complex images. They don't go manually scouring the internet for real-world photos to test it. Instead, they prompt Claude itself to actively generate targeted, synthetic data designed specifically to exploit its own weakness. You run the eval, you prove the flaw mathematically, and then your research team steps in to intervene. And the beauty of this targeted synthetic testing is just the sheer efficiency of it. You don't always need millions of rows of data to prove a point. Sometimes, honestly, just a few dozen perfectly synthesized test cases are enough. That tiny batch can isolate a real customer friction point, prove that it's a systemic issue, and give the research team the exact data signal they need to start adjusting the model's training. Which brings us to our final topic, Section 5, Training Model Character and Building Trustworthy Autonomous Agents. Okay, this is where it gets a bit sci-fi. Have you ever heard of model dreaming? Just like human biology, managed agents actually use downtime to silently summarize, prune, and consolidate their background memories of user interactions. It's literally actively cleaning up contradictory statements while you sleep, ensuring that its mental model of who you are and what you need is pristine and accurate for the next day. But here's the catch. As these agents operate autonomously for longer and longer periods, a really profound question pops up. How do you evaluate an AI model's personality? When an agent has to make a tough judgment call, like whether to push back on a user's request or determine what's actually safe, how do a product manager and a researcher quantify something as fuzzy as core beliefs and values? Well, the answer is this fascinating blend of deep human intuition and heavy technical intervention. First, researchers literally have to sit down and read thousands of raw transcripts. They are looking for really subtle behavioral shifts, like is the model becoming too sycophantic? Is it pushing back correctly? Once that human intuition successfully maps out a character flaw, the technical process kicks in. They adjust the model's core constitution and use reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF, to mathematically steer the model's core values back on track. I know it sounds completely out there, but Anthropic literally has dedicated teams studying what it means for an agent to be a conscious actor. By taking the concept of an AI's internal mental model seriously right now and rigorously mapping out how it thinks in these hypothetical scenarios, they are actively learning how to build safer, more reliable boundaries for the autonomous agents we'll all be using tomorrow. So here is the big, crucial question I want to leave you with in this explainer. As we increasingly hand over our databases, our strategic brainstorming, and our daily decision-making to AI, are we truly prepared to trust the character of the agents we're building? Because the product manager of tomorrow isn't just shipping features anymore. They are carefully orchestrating the very behaviors and values that will define our future. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep exploring.